Hey mom.
Yeah.
Hey mom.
Yes.
Mom.
Yes.
Do you want to be in my Mac Miller album review?
No.
Do you want to be in the video?
No.
Do you want to talk about Mac Miller?
No.
Do you know who Mac Miller is?
Yes, I listened to him yesterday. Andrew was awful.
Yes, everybody. As you know, this is IMO Reviews. It's about time we talk about the new Mac Miller album. Mac Miller being a Philadelphia rapper that my mom, as stated before, thinks is awful, apparently. The last commercial effort we saw from Mac Miller that was a full project was Divine Feminine, an album dedicated to the beauty of the female nature, and a lot of themes had to do with love, romance, some had to do with sex, jealousy, but it kind of was an album, as Mac Miller states, about the process of falling in love with somebody. I actually was a huge fan of this album. I can't even lie and say it's not one of my favorite hip hop albums, because it is. I think the way that Mac Miller used orchestrated instrumentals mixed in with hip hop, I thought was really great. I think a lot of the singing features he had were excellent. I think that the writing was very romantic and portrayed women in a way that you don't really see often in hip hop. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of rap songs that degrade women horribly. I mean, look at like all of Eminem's early work, for example. So I like to see that Mac was doing something different. I thought it was a very impressive album. A lot has changed for him since then, though. Ariana Grande has broken up with him, now dating Pete Davidson. In the news recently as well, it was said that he was driving his car, crashed into a pole, and then just fled the scene. I don't know if some kind of depressive episode or if he was drunk or I don't know. Anything could really happen with Mac Miller. So, in this state at least. All of this has led up to the release of Swimming, his newest album, which we're going to review today. Swimming, as I expected, is a very depressing album. Not to say that there isn't chill production, because there is. Mac Miller's known for like cloud rap and that kind of laid-back style of delivery, which shows up on here. But in his lyricism and in the cadence of his delivery, you can feel more of that depression kind of creeping in on Mac. Almost like what we saw on the Watching Movies with the Sound Off album, except this feels a little bit less psychedelic, kind of more minimalistic, kind of more dragged on a bit and dreary in the production. I think this album starts out really strong with the intro track, Come Back to Earth. One critique I had about Mac Miller on Divine Feminine was his singing chops, his ability to present like melodic vocals. He's shown he's a capable rapper, but I feel like there were some tracks, specifically my favorite part with Ariana Grande, with that track was horrible singing, even by her, when she was a professional. But on this track, it seems like Mac Miller really has improved a lot with his singing. I mean, the melodies in this are dreary and depressive, but beautiful sounding, as he sings about trying to find a way out of his head. I guess in a sense to come back to earth, as the track is called. There's a very relaxed guitar within the instrumental. It's a good groove, honestly. Like it's almost going back to like the groovy Mac Miller that we're used to from Divine Feminine, but this time with a depressive twist. Hurt Feelings is similar in that sense, where like it's a similar theme of depression, trying to find a way out of your head, trying to keep yourself grounded, except this one has more of like trap style drums. I like the whoa 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 like in the background, that kind of shit. I thought that was really cool. The melody he did for that was great. And then we have two more excellent tracks in What's the Use and Perfecto. What's the Use has kind of like a guerrilla style instrumental, something you would hear on the Now Now, which is their latest album, where it has like a funk groove, something you kind of keep on in the background, but still interesting enough to keep your attention. Again, Mac Miller writes very depressive lyrics saying, what's the use of me trying things, but it doesn't really come off as depressing with this upbeat, funky instrumental, because although he's saying what's the use in trying things, I mean, this song makes people want to dance. It's that kind of groove. Like I said, it's kind of Gorillaz-esque in that style, with the funky guitars, funky bass, good pacing of the drums. Perfecto is a bit slower and drearier, with some chimes on the instrumental that are just like mixed kind of weirdly in with the drums, but it all sounds very nice together. Mac Miller's delivering a very slow verse. It kind of sounds like dragged out. A lot of the deliveries on this album, it sounds like Mac Miller's almost not opening his mouth all the way, but I think he's kind of doing that to add to the feel of what he's rapping about specifically, which in a lot of tracks is depression and the feeling of numbness almost. But for a few tracks, like these first four, it works out very well. Perfecto 2, I also like the poem he does at the end of it. This spoken word rap piece at the end over these minor keyed synths adds to what the song is about, being a perfectionist to the point where it hurts almost. He starts talking about this woman as well that he wants to have her swing him around in his arms, but with the way that he's saying it, it's not really romantic in a way like Divine Feminine was. This is more like he knows he's not going to. Maybe referring to Ariana Grande, perhaps. The following track, Self Care, was a single he released, and I dig this one at first, not only just for the themes of treating yourself right when you do feel the way that Mac Miller has described himself to feel in these first four tracks. I thought that was kind of a nice message, one that I guess we don't see from Mac as much when he's in this kind of like mind state that we've seen him on before, like for his previous albums, such as Watching Movies with the Sound Off, or maybe even the Faces mixtape. But after a while, this track kind of like got annoying to me, specifically the chorus where he's like, "I'm trying to treat me right." Like I didn't like the way he dragged out those words. He does it later on a track, which I'm going to talk about, and I feel like it adds a corniness to a track that I feel like is supposed to have a positive, important message, and I just didn't really like it. Although it is a very fun instrumental, I feel like it just doesn't really complement that so well. I feel like it wasn't the vibe he should have went for with that cadence and delivery. This album takes a huge fucking dip with Wings. This track, Mac Miller is sounding so depressed that he's not even really delivering these verses correctly with any energy. I mean, even on like songs like I'm Not Real from Watching Movies with the Sound Off, although Mac Miller is kind of rapping about this like deep eternal dread, he does seem to have some like remorse and energy towards it. This song is just plain numb, especially the minimal instrumental, which like the problem with a lot of these following instrumentals and the problem with Wings is that there's so little to it, and not in a good way like on Ye by Kanye. It's almost as if like he really needs to just throw something in, extra bass, extra drums, something to keep it going. Because a lot of these songs, looking at them right now, is like 4:40, 5 minutes long, some are 6 minutes long, and they just feel like they drag on with how little is in these instrumentals, how little is driving it. Not even just the pacing of them, but just the actual instrumentals themselves, like how much is mixed in there. Small Worlds also was another single on this album, but I didn't like this track either. Like I said with Self Care, he kind of does that same thing where he's like, "It's a small world," and like he drags out these words, but Twiggy, stop doing a video. I won't play with you. No. Yeah, sorry, that's my pup wants to play. Little squeak toy of sorts, you know. Cute little thing. Cute little thing. Anyway, as I was saying, Small Worlds. I feel like he does like drag on that one part of the chorus where he's like, "It's a small world," and I don't really like the cadence that he says it in. The same with Self Care. I feel like it's exaggerated a lot, and it adds like this corniness to a track that, for the most part, a lot of these songs have very serious topic, or like at least something that should be pushed as an important message, and he's kind of making it sound goofy in a way, which with early Mac Miller's music may have worked, but I don't think this works for the vibe he's going for with these specific tracks on Swimming. I didn't even listen to the whole thing in Conversation Part 1. That song bored the shit out of me. I can't even lie. Dunno is a song that I think has like very pretty sounding synth leaves, so I think is like a beautiful way to open this track. But again, I mean, it's not really anything different from the way the other tracks are produced, or even the topics of the other tracks. It's still just kind of Mac Miller being depressed and sad for himself. Mac Miller is also trying to like do these like hummings in the beginning, kind of like how Kid Cudi would, but doesn't have the same melody or like delivery that he would. And again, it kind of adds this like goofiness to the song, which should be very serious, and it just kind of kills the whole vibe of like the chilled out, spacey cloud rap style. Jet Fuel's a song where the album picks up a little bit. I do like whatever that Jamaican dude's saying. I have no fucking clue to be honest, but his voice sounds good. The wave sounds in the background I think adds to the feel of the track. Again, a lot of this album too is also Mac Miller searching for peace of mind. I think by adding that into the track, it incorporates really well with the theme and production. There's also this guitar melody that's leading it that it sounds very beautiful, very minimalistic, but pretty to the ears. It's a bit of an earworm kind of loop within the beat, and his delivery on this is nice. I mean, and Mac Miller's delivery on this song is better too. It's still very laid back. It still sounds like he's very depressed, like an Earl Sweatshirt kind of delivery. But he flows on this beat really nicely, which kind of makes it feel like it's not dragging on despite the song being one of the longest on this album. Where songs that feel shorter on this album feel like they're dragging on longer because he doesn't really have as interesting of a flow or as interesting of a instrumental in the background. And the album dips again for the last two songs, So It Goes in 2009. Two tracks where I do have to say Mac has a lot more passion on these. It sounds like, honestly, especially 2009, like he's almost on the verge of crying. I mean, it's amazing the amount of passion he put into these, but at this point, like, the album has dragged on for too long, and I feel like it's not enough emotion to really make the track interesting, you know? And because he is putting a lot of emotion behind it, unfortunately, I feel like the tone of his voice, like the pitch of it, is kind of all over the place, where some parts sound high and squeaky and then some parts sound low, and it's just a bit of a mess, to be honest. I will give him props for being one of the more emotional tracks, which I think this album did need, but it wasn't really delivered in, I think, the way that many of us want it to be delivered. Yeah, I mean, overall, there's some highlights on this album. I do like the way it starts with the first two tracks, but I feel like it just kind of drags on for a bit as a full project. It's not really Mac Miller's most cohesive project or most interesting, which is kind of a shame because I was a huge fan of Divine Feminine, as I said, and although I feel like this kind of goes in that direction, he's missing a lot of elements from that album that made it interesting. For example, like on songs like Stay, he had this whole horn section. I wish he had production like that on this. I know that that album's a bit more upbeat than this one, but he could have done something like that to kind of add to the production and make these instrumentals at least a bit more interesting so that I could listen to the whole thing without kind of getting bored or lost in just confusion, I guess. I will give this album 3 Bobs, as in Bob's Burgers. My guy.